Welcome to Spirited Straight Talk, the podcast to help you thrive with the help of spirit. I'm Deb Shepard, psychic medium, spiritual teacher, and author. Each week, I bring new insights to help you heal from loss, connect with spirit, and turn setbacks into triumphs. So let's get started. We are born with the ability to empower our soul to greatness. It doesn't mean we need to be famous or an influencer, but we are not to live in fear that the critic has more power over our soul than our greatness. What I want to talk about today is how fear controls so much of our life. And today we hear words as anxiety or overwhelmed, not feeling balanced, a sense of not seeing our value. And with the idea of stress that people have and anxiety, it is a word that is used quite often. You and I hear it all the time, Dana. And I know that we have felt times of fear. The other part of fear is we believe as humans, and we're taught at least, that if we try to stay in control and we don't surrender or trust, then we have power. But what we find out is that really is a limiting belief, and it takes away our ability to listen to our intuition, to trust what is happening to our body, and the ideas of how we become greatness. You and I the other night were watching TV with grandkids, and they wanted to watch the movie Monsters, Inc. Mm-hmm. And what I love about that story is the belief system in the beginning is that they try to capture the children's fear, scream in order to have energy. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a fascinating concept of a belief system that is obviously Pixar or Disney, however it's written, that how energy is...
Fear holds so much power.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the critic inside of us and the critics around us that keep us from living our true authentic self and define that greatness that we have. And fear, which I've talked about for years in my practice, stands for false evidence appearing real, because we really believe that if we don't have control or if things don't work a certain way, then things are going to fail. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Something horrible is going to happen. If we look at the word fear and change its definition, for instance, what really is the fear? And you and I were talking about this before the podcast. Fear of heights, fear of dying, people have fears of speaking in public, right?
Yeah. And it can manifest as PTSD or fight or flight, which I've talked about before, that I have constantly, which affects your heart rate variability and all kinds of other stuff. But yeah, fear, you feel it in your body.
And your body decides how is it going to manage it. And over time, your health is also affected with all that fear. Mm-hmm. So there's a fear of, what's going to happen? What if this happens? And we have that critic in our head. We don't find ways to navigate a different way of approaching life. And so we live in that constant fear, and our intuition is not even a tool that we can utilize. Mm-hmm. So let's say that we look at the fear and name it and say, okay, if I name that fear, then maybe I have different tools, or I can find the tools to manage it. So let's say that the fear is abandonment. I'm really fearful of making these types of choices because what if everyone abandons me? The fear may be being judged. What happens if I say or do this and then everyone judges me? Mm-hmm. So fear is that illusion or idea or expression, I guess, is the anxiety comes because what if this happens? What if I do this and this happens? So it's really about the attachment to it. Mm-hmm. What is the final result if we make these changes in our lives or if we address it? Of course, if you have a fear of heights, you don't want to get close to an edge because we understand the outcome there. But let's just talk about everyday life, the fear of making a change, the fear of leaving your career or dating or ending a relationship.
Or getting an email that you don't want to receive.
Absolutely. We first go into that feeling. And I know we joke about things as, okay, we need to talk. I mean, no one likes to hear those words, we need to talk. And when we do, those red flags go up thinking, okay, something bad's going to happen. That fear of not knowing is really it. The fear is, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I can't control it or respond. Mm-hmm. But if we learn in the beginning how to figure out how to respond to these things and we understand what the fear is, then the fear begins to subside and we feel more empowered. And that's where we were all born with the ability to empower our souls to greatness. When we eliminate a little bit of the fear and control. One of our students in our legacy program used the word this year as surrender because, she likes the spreadsheet. She likes to have control. She felt safe. And she's saying now, I want to trust. And that is intuition. Surrendering and trust is really the wiring you have or had when you were born, and then we kind of toss it aside. So it's going back to those roots basically and being able to trust again.
Well, I think in some cases, though, life teaches you not to trust as much. So you start to put defenses up.
Correct.
But that's also, I guess it's dependent on your situation, but that also, I feel, has potential to either open you up to being more intuitive or shut you down to your intuition.
Correct. But the thing you just said, which is what I want to talk about too, is trusting other people versus trusting your gut.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do many times is, well, I want to trust, so I'm going to trust you. But our radar inside says, you may want to think it twice or ask more questions. And we don't do that. And so we just are open and then we get hurt and we go, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
Well, there was probably that feeling in the beginning that something didn't feel quite right, but we didn't identify what that was. We just wanted to trust it. So if you've been hurt by people and you see a pattern, that's what you want to look at as that pattern. So as I talk about the first time I walked down the aisle, my gut said, run, Deb, run, run, Forrest, run. And I didn't. And then a year later, the results were what I thought a year before, but I didn't.
Yeah, but worse.
But I didn't trust myself. And I was worried about judgment and abandonment, which exactly is what happened. So even though I knew those things and felt them, I couldn't identify or put words to the description of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt always has some good quotes. And one of them, he says in 1933, is nothing to fear but fear itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a quote that I think most people have heard, unless you're not taught that in history these days. Fear becomes that Monsters, Inc. It is, the monster that comes under your bed or in the closet that we can't identify, but we know it's supposed to be scary. So we go there and people can relate to fear. Don't you think, when people share, so yeah, that was really scary, or, yeah, this has happened to me.
Right.
We really identify with that pain.
I think most religions, I think there's so many positives to what is provided by being a part of a religion or a faith or what have you.
Right.
But
and that could be community, family.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything in community, let's just go there even.
But what I was going to say is that I feel like there are so many things that elicit fear and control.
Yes.
When it comes to cults, for example, like religious cults.
How I was raised.
How you were raised. Yeah. It was all fear-based, still is all fear-based and all control-based.
What I love about what you just said is the word control. So if we're in fear, many of us want control to make us feel safe. But if we're in an environment that's very controlling, we're not feeling safe because fear, it's used for fear.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting irony that a word of control is used both ways? One is we don't want to feel fear, and the other one is it brings in fear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why control is not really a great word when you want to use your intuition. You know this very well. When I teach in my program about Soul's Contract, Our Life Purpose, Why We're Here, it's about responding to people versus having us teach them to change for us. So if we have someone in our life that is very judgmental, someone that wants to abandon us, all those kind of things that brings up the fear, that afraidness of not feeling enough, not feeling the value, we want that other person to get it. If they change, if that partner, spouse, boss gets it, then I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
or why don't they? Why don't they just understand what's supposed to be right? Or why don't they just ... Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the control piece. If they would do this, I would be okay. And so the lesson in this, again, is they're not here to get it. You are. So every time you're trying to control a situation or have a certain outcome, you're trying to really not have any fear. I want to feel okay. So if I can control the situation and I can control others and everyone knows that this is the happy kumbaya, we're going to be okay, or I'm going to at least be okay. Unfortunately, that hasn't worked. And if it has, give us a phone call because we want to know the formula. But it doesn't work. We've tried to have other people in our lives understand certain things and get the clarity from our perspective. And it has not worked because they're here to teach us. So the fear is, am I going to be hurt?
Right.
What is my value? Am I going to pay something for this?
And I just want to make sure you repeat that, because I think that's a big piece of it is we're not here to teach others. We're here to learn. We're always the student. And you always say that is we're always the student.
Always
we're
the
never
student.
the teacher.
Never the teacher. And I've had people go, well, when is this done? When am I done learning this? I'm like, well, you're not enlightened yet because you're still walking the earth. And even as the teacher, I say, I'm still learning these lessons. I don't get to walk away from a situation. I mean, I can, but the lesson's still there. I mean, I may have, my tools may be used more often. You just don't use your tools as often, but my tools are still there. So we're not done learning. You've got a smile on your face. I know you guys can't see her, but she's thinking something.
Yeah, I was, because we have had some people in classes and or have sessions with you that tell you that they think they're like enlightened and they may not come back next go round, or which then we've subsequently seen them learn more lessons. But when you talk about we're not enlightened, I mean, I think of enlightened ones as Buddha,
Yes.
as Jesus, as
Any master that's been here to walk the earth.
archangels,
Yeah.
and ascended masters, Kuan Yin, all the
I'm
ascended
certainly not
masters.
even close to that.
So it's interesting how
Our perspective.
the perception
Right.
and perspective, perception
Or
of
both of them.
what enlightened means.
And if you have any fear or you want to control, that means you're certainly not enlightened because you're still at that level of fear. And so in your incarnation, when you came here, whatever your belief system is, you have basically all these things to say, we're here to help you. But bottom line, your life purpose is to get you through your fears. So if you're afraid to have any fear or any challenges, that means you're kind of back in kindergarten. Like, I just want to learn to stand in line and I want to color. And it doesn't matter if I color outside the lines. I just want to have fun. Taking this on, your fears is saying, I can do this because I came to learn these lessons. And that's sometimes hard to understand because we think, I want to avoid that. I want to have serenity. I want to have calmness. Absolutely. The fear is it's never going to go away, but how do you show up and are you prepared in advance to avoid it? Or are you realizing that you're empowered and when it shows up, you're all equipped? And that's a different mindset because when you're always being prepared to fight it off, that energy is saying, I'm ready for battle. I'm ready for war. I'm ready to take this on. And that's the law of attraction. That's what we're manifesting. So we wonder why there's a lot of drama in my life, or I keep getting these challenges versus instead, I find the peace and serenity when I can. And when things show up that have a little bit of a lesson or a fear, I go back to understanding what I'm here to learn and how do I shift that energy? Because it's all about our vibration. And each of us know that we meet different people and situations and we can feel, wow, they just feel so good, that vibration. And then we meet other people going, where's the door? Where's the exit sign? When can I get the hell out of here? And we have them in our life all the time, whether it's, family, coworkers, clients, neighbors, the people that come around us and how it shifts our body. And that's when we want to talk about anxiety and fear and not be able to tune into our intuition and listen. The biggest thing I want people to know is how this happens. The fear, a lot of it is judgment, that critic inside of us. And if you truly want to be a leader, you're going to have criticism. So if you want to be famous or an influencer or help change the planet, be a healer, any of those things, which I hear a lot of, then what comes with the territory is the pushback, the judgment, perhaps the abandonment, the competition. That brings up anxiety, fear. Am I good enough? Where's my value? That there may be 100 people thinking, wow, that was really powerful. And the 2 people that say, you know what, that wasn't really good. Which one do we listen to in that critic? If those critics, as we know how Roosevelt talked about it, if you're not in the arena and they're on the sidelines judging, how valuable is their judgment? And I know we've dealt with that where we've had people be very critical of things, but they're not in the arena. And we do take it on, and we don't want to wear that as a badge of honor. What we want to do is say, I'm learning the lesson. How do I deflect? How do I get through this? How do I continue to empower myself? So that critic of the people outside of us in our brain, all those things don't stop us from evolving.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about Larry, the left brain?
Larry, the left brain, if you haven't heard that. So we have a left brain and a right brain. And our right brain is our creativity. It's our intuition. It's our guides that come through. The left brain is always, well, did you do it right? Was it, could you have done better? What do you think other people are going to think?
Show me the numbers.
Show me, yeah. And that left brain critic that we all have can build upon ourselves, and we don't release it, clean it, give it new vibe. So what we want to look at is going back to your energy vibration, understanding where fear starts. You may want to take time to even journal or look back at your life and saying, when was the first time that I felt fear? Did I not feel safe? And why didn't I feel safe? And who in my life said things, or especially in your story, if anyone listening hasn't heard your story on our podcast, to go back, is you were beaten, you were not fed, you didn't know what was going to happen in the hour or the next day. That fear creates things in your future of, like you said, fight or flight, wanting to be prepared, wanting to make choices that you know that you have some control and you want to be safe.
Control is a huge piece when you've been in a situation like that. I think not feeling in control makes you feel like you have tons of fear.
Yes.
So working your way through that, I think, is essential.
I think the word control can be a feeling of using it as scarcity or being the victim. I think if we use the word control as how do I empower myself, that word can be translated in a different way so that fear isn't as the big elephant in the room.
It's not as powerful. Yeah.
Right. So control means I'm not going to feel safe. So these are the things I want to do. If you look at empowerment, going back to what do I need to do so I feel safe? Mm-hmm. And that might mean I have certain people I know I can call and get a safe response, or that I think one of the things you have said this year is to listen, not to respond, but listen to understand. Is there someone in your life that you can call that will understand? Is there something that you can do that brings you nurturing or makes you laugh? I have my go-to movies that I've seen for years to allow me to laugh, because that changes a vibration. It changes an energy.
Well, bringing that back to Monsters, Inc. too, because you remember at the end, they figure out that laughter is more powerful than
the fears. So when we want to, instead of saying, I want to control the situation, if you come back and say, I can empower myself so that when there is stress, when there are moments that I feel that I don't feel safe, or I may feel like a victim, or I'm going to be abandoned or judged. What is it that you can draw upon to help you through it? And for some people, we brought this up, it can be their faith, whatever that faith is. But if the faith makes you feel guilt and shame and judgment, fear, then is your faith serving you to your highest good? Or do you need to revisit that faith to say, that's adding to my fear, that's adding to my lower vibration? I don't feel like I can trust myself because I'm going to go back into something that wants to control me and make me feel it's the critic. And that is, if your faith is critical of you all the time, that you're never good enough, then that might not be what you want in your tool bag or how to empower yourself. So each of us are born with that sixth sense, that knowing, that feeling. Our experiences say that was painful. I don't want to have that happen again, so I'm going to do it differently. Now, the positive side to that is, those experiences say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to listen differently. The limiting belief means I'm never going to trust. I'm never going to open my heart up again. I'm never going to try anything new. I'm not going to ever, whatever the story is behind it, because that says you have no value or empowerment, and judgment is more powerful. The critic is more powerful than you. So that's the balancing of, okay, I made a mistake. I'm not going to do that one again. but maybe I'm going to still do it again, but differently. Maybe I'm going to show up in the situation, have a voice, but I'm going to use my voice in a different way. Perhaps I've had these relationships that haven't worked, so I'm going to try it again, but I'm going to show up differently or attract someone different.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in mentoring. If you keep attracting projects, how do you expect to attract a partner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you are only looking for your value from your career, then sometimes we put so much energy into our career that we don't see any value anywhere else. And so there's a fear of, what if I lose my job? What if people don't think I'm good enough? What if this is my only way of expressing myself? Again, that creates all these fears, all these criticism. There's an anxiety. There's a limiting belief versus, you know what? I have value in other areas in this job. And my job is just a part of me or a piece of me. It's not my entire value.
Right.
So looking at your fears, looking at what it does to your body, if your health is being challenged, if you're gaining weight, that could be me. I'm losing it now, but yes, the gaining the weight, having headaches, not being able to sleep, stomach aches, anxiety, all these things are usually affected by fear. What you want to then sit back and go, what can I manage? What can I release? What is it that is my trigger points? And if you work with a therapist or you read these books, what they say is look at your triggers. I will say, if you go back to when you didn't feel safe, maybe as a child or throughout life or in relationships, that's where we create that wall that says, I am not safe. How do I then empower myself? How do I look at things in a different way? The other thing I know that I see a lot is that we try to be perfect. And if you're a perfectionist, the anxiety and the fear is going to completely control your life. If you can just, I don't want to use the word lighten up a little bit, but look at practicing something or appreciating that the effort you made. Someone was joking, I was talking to a student the other day, how kids today, and this wasn't when my kids are being raised, but no matter if your team was number one or the bottom of the list, everyone gets a trophy, everyone wins. And we were kind of laughing about that situation. Like, is that a good thing? And I thought, you know what? Why not? Does it really matter at the age of 7 whether everyone gets a trophy or not? Or are people accepting failures or that they're not good enough, or are they working as hard as everybody else? Bottom line, it's looking at your belief. Does it really matter that 7, 8, 9-year-olds are all getting a trophy that one day they said, yeah, I kind of played this sport with the kids on my team and I don't remember their name?
Yes, it matters because they didn't win. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we do go there. People go into, when I had to grow up, I walked in the snow uphill both ways. I mean, it's that limiting belief of how it should look versus maybe it's an opportunity to look at things a little differently. Think about your story. Think about your fears, label them in a different way. Do you feel that your fears and your ability to trust is based on the need to have control? And bottom line is what I told my kids early on, everything is fixable unless someone dies. Meaning if something happens to the car, if you lose your job, if you're not doing well in school, we can fix it. And I think we don't realize that we have the ability in our world to change things and to learn from them versus fear that we may have a failure, that we may not always succeed top of our class. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's always of great value. I think living a life that you can trust yourself and that you were incarnated with the ability to have your own navigation system and to trust that has much more value than anything else that you can show me. And I do believe when you are able to surrender a little bit of that process, that's when life can really, truly be amazing. So if you're looking for serenity, if you're looking to find peace, calmness, connect with your guides, then start identifying and naming those fears so you have the power to be able to achieve the success and the goals that you want to have in this life.
So write down the fears and start to turn them around.
Yeah, they're not bigger than you. The fears aren't bigger than you because you came in to learn these lessons and you do have it. So release the critic. As I said in the beginning, I wrote this quote with my guides and I want to say it one more time. We are born with the ability to empower our souls to greatness. It doesn't mean to be famous, but not to live in fear that the critic has more power over your soul than your greatness. Say that a few times a day and see how you feel. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope it inspired you. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified of new episodes. And let's get connected. Visit debshepard.com for more insights, support, workshops, and to book a session with me. And finally, always remember, your loved ones in spirit are just a thought away. Even though they're on the other side, they're always by your side.